But the girl next to my locker, she like did her hair in the morning and she put like little clips in it to make it look pretty. And I had this like almost out of body experience to be like, this girl like pays attention to this in the morning. And I was like, and then I like looked around the school and I was like, other people are doing this too. Yeah. And I was like, oh gosh, like, what have I missed? You know, like, was I supposed to be doing this the whole time?
Or for those of you who have never been to her channel, she's known as Lijo on YouTube. Dude, Lindsay, you have been an inspiration to all the INTJs out there. You're the stepping stone. You're one of the innovators when it comes down to INTJ content creators. You, Chris from Azura Psych, and a few other content creators. You guys were the people that we were watching when the pandemic happened. I believe you had videos pre-pandemic as well. That's like, those are the videos where I got introduced to being an INTJ. And honestly, the type of content that you put out there, I absolutely love. It really does dig into the more holistic side of being an INTJ, because a lot of the INTJ content creators out there, especially the ones that are new to making videos, they stick to NINTE, but your videos, there's a hint of FI in there. Sometimes there's SE in it. And I absolutely love it because it makes it so relatable. You have 35,000 subscribers, which is probably, I think, is the highest subscriber count for any INTJ YouTube content creator. I don't...
Oh, snap.
Yeah, so please take it from here. Let us know who you are.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thanks, John. And it's funny, I think I organically came upon your channel too, and I checked out a few videos and became a subscriber because I was like, I like this content, you know? So it's cool you're able to sync up for this video. And yeah, I've been doing YouTube a while, and it seemed like, you know, for myself, that was the kind of content that I connected with the most. And so it was the easiest to, you know, translate onto camera.
So the purpose of this video is to go over dating as an INTJ. For a lot of you who are new to my channel or just new to typology in general, INTJs are nefarious or notorious for being one of the least romantic types out there. We're stereotyped to be the types that don't care about romance. There are certain posts I see on Reddit or social media that says that INTJs, we don't have feelings. So if we're heartbroken, there's no such thing as being a heartbroken INTJ. It's all shit content. It doesn't make sense. If you understand MBTI, you understand that everyone is, at the end of the day, still human. And INTJs, we feel emotions as deeply as anyone else. We just don't like to extrovert it.
We have FI. That's a deep function. So
yeah, having FI, it manifests itself very differently for us than other people. And the purpose of this video is to kind of just dig into that portion of being an INTJ and to describe how having introverted feeling in our third function affects us in the dating world. And having Lindsay here, she's able to provide the perspective for being an INTJ lady. And for me, myself, I'm a cisgender, straight INTJ male. So is there anything I forgot, Lindsay?
I think that's it, yeah.
Now that we're done with introduction, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this topic, right? Why does dating suck? You know, like, I made a video about why dating sucks in my personal life, but let's hear from you, being an INTJ lady, and just the struggles that you ladies have to face when it comes down to dating.
It's a great question, and I'm sure that you have, like, I'm interested to hear what your insight is on the other side. You know, when I was younger, and I also see this through a lot of like the clients who I speak with who are younger INTJ females, it comes back to like a certain theme that I've seen for myself, I've seen for a lot of these younger girls, and even sometimes older girls too, right? Where it's being able to realize in some way, whether you have a definition for it at that point or not, whether you know type yet or not, there is this realization at some point that like you live in an SF world and there is this value of like SF. And you also realize that like whatever that is, you don't really get it, you know? And so, you know, when you look at the normal dating spectrum, when you look at really anything that's valued in terms of like dating profiles, it's very SF driven, right? Like, like who is this? What does this person look like in the sensory? Do I like it or not? It's very AB. Having an I, you're able to kind of connect these pieces of like, there's this thing, I don't quite have it. Maybe it's like this. And it's like you're trying to flex a muscle that you don't flex because you do see that very much valued, especially I think in women, is the ability to connect to that SF version of yourself, no matter what your functions are. And I think for a lot of INTJ females that there is a disconnect, almost feeling wrong being in the NT self, either because it's what you can observe from the outside, like the SF is what's valued, right? So how do I fit into that picture? And again, it's not like this is something that these people aren't talking functions, right? If they don't know type yet. It's just this understanding of like, this is the thing that everyone kind of is doing and they kind of like, and I don't really know how to do that. And if I try to do it, sometimes I can kind of get it, but sometimes I don't. I'm definitely not as good as these other people at doing whatever this is.
Yeah.
But all that time, you're kind of like not connecting with the person that you truly are, which is the NT person, right? Because in a lot of ways that seems not valued from a societal aspect. I think that's what a lot of younger INTJ females will struggle with is like, how do I be this kind of like SF value person inherently when I'm an NT, human.
Yeah, no, I absolutely understand. Being a guy, we go through something similar too. But I'm going to be completely honest. One of the privilege of being a guy, INTJ, is that NT is valued pretty highly for men, right? So
yeah, it is.
It is valued relatively highly in comparison to our lady counterpart. However, that doesn't make it easier. It's just easier comparatively to being a lady. But you said a few things. I want to make sure that we touch upon it and make sure that there's a little bit more clarity. When you mention SF personalities and NT personalities, can you provide a little bit more details on what that means, especially from your gender?
I'll take us like back into a moment in time, right? So like if I like zoom back to my memory of like what my high school was like, there were some girls in high school, they weren't friends with me, but like they were there and they just like knew whether it was how to dress, how to talk, what to do, like anything that was cool. And that like gave that perception of like cool, like they just did it. It seemed like naturally, it was naturally. And the tribe, the collective, also found those things valuable. And so, when you look at like, whether it's an ESFP, an ESFJ, like the SF functions, when those are dominant in someone's personality, whether they're on the IP side of being like very like individualistic and, a little bit more like to their own set of values and not caring so much about everyone else's, that's kind of cool still, right? Yeah. If you have that FI and SC function side by side. And then like the ESFJs is like, they have their own way of being cool. They have their own way of, like unifying from like a tribe perspective and can be like the ringleaders of, these bigger groups and stuff. And so again, it all comes down to like what is valued in the physical world, the sensory world. And then the NT is just the opposite of that. So that the NT is just the ENTPs, INTJs, ENTJs. The difference there is like, you can see the other side. We all have all four functions, right? So like there is an ESFP inside of me. I just like use her in a very clumsy way, right? It's not a very like cool way. It's like Bambi, newborn, baby deer like way. And, you get better with that through time. You start to learn like where you can leverage certain skills and where you can and what's going to work and what's not. But, when you're young, and I always say like really under the age of 28, I'd say, is like, I feel like everyone has their Bambi legs through 28, like at minimum.
Dude, you're showing our age. You're showing our age right now. 28 is young. All right, ladies and gentlemen, for an INTJ, 28 is young.
It is young. There's nothing wrong. And like, I think also you realize after a period of time, like, okay, yeah, everyone is doing this. Like everyone is fumbling with their lower functions in their own way. It just depends what those are. So some people are fumbling with the NT, I think as a female though, it's like, that's not as noticed. Or it can be like overlooked a lot of ways. Whereas you could be really strong in NT and everyone's like, okay, whatever. They're like, can you SF though? And you're like, oh, what? So that's kind of the feeling that it feels like catching up with what is SF valued versus, being an NT person.
Walk me through the mental process. You're aware that in order for you to achieve a relationship or whatever the end goal is, you know that there's certain steps that you can take to make yourself more appealing in a dating realm. Why don't you do that?
I think that a lot of INTJ females will kind of not really try in terms of like the dating spectrum because there's a lot of unknowns and there's a lot of like, I don't even really know what to do,
Yeah.
and you kind of just exist in your bubble until, another human comes along. And, to be honest,
Yeah.
because it's like, that's like a kind of like, that proficiency is a kind of SF flex that, especially when you're younger, seems very far away. And so we can only catch up so much in our own cognitive development at any particular age, right? So I think that, for instance, like when I remember being in middle school, when the day I was standing at my locker and I realized that the girl next to my locker, we're like 12, right? But the girl next to my locker, she like did her hair in the morning and she put like little clips in it to make it look pretty. And I had this like almost out of body experience to be like, this girl like pays attention to this in the morning. And I was like, and then I like looked around the school and I was like, other people are doing this too. Yeah. And I was like, oh gosh, like, what have I missed? Like, was I supposed to be doing this the whole time? And that's what it'll feel like. Was I supposed to be doing this?
Yeah.
Was I supposed to be like, was I supposed to know what hair was? And was I supposed to know what a hairstyle was? I remember like one time I was on my way to work and like I had gotten out of the shower, right out the door, was in a Starbucks, and like someone in the Starbucks line goes, oh my gosh, why are you wet? Because my hair was wet, And I was like, wait, am I not, like in my head, I was like, am I not supposed to like go outside with wet hair? Like, is that like not an okay thing? And like, and this is much later in life, And so you always feel like you're catching up with what is or is not SF appropriate, whether you have that terminology or not.
And that makes a lot of sense. As a guy in middle school, I've noticed those things too. Especially, and I don't know whether this is just a me thing, but it sounds like it's pretty common for INTJ men out there that like, we want to be seen as very capable, competent, like an alpha male, like for a lack of a better term, right? Someone who has our shit together and someone that can take care of our own and whomever's around our circle. But we don't care enough to put effort into it. It's a very small subset of INTJ men that are really into bodybuilding or really into sports because, and I fall into both spectrum. When I was younger, I had to learn how to play sports because I have a lot of older siblings, especially older brothers. And in order for me to keep up with them, I had to learn how to be like very SE heavy. But the older I got, once they were more out of the picture in high school, they were in college, or they were out doing their own thing, I started devaluing that. I started watching, looking at football players, thinking to myself, wow, why would you put yourself in a position where you could potentially hurt yourself and get a concussion? But at the exact same time, here I am just like, wow, he has the prettiest girl at school. In order for me to, or at least objectively from my perspective, it's in order for me to, attain a relationship with the quote unquote prettiest person, I would have to make myself more SE heavy, or be in a more SF world.
Right. So you have the SE pressure too.
Yeah, exactly. Even as a guy, we did go through those societal pressure. Again, it's going to be a lot different from what you ladies face, especially as a man in America. And I don't think this is type specific, but the value of being a guy is how much you can provide. The more you can provide, the more attractive you are, generally speaking. That's why you would see someone that is extremely conventionally attractive dating someone who, like, dating a guy who isn't conventionally attractive. It's because of resources and what the men can bring to the table. And INTJs were aware of that. And
exactly, you can see it.
Yeah, exactly. And then going back to the inner ESFP side, I daydream about being the high school football player. I daydream about playing basketball and then having everyone cheer for me. But am I going to do it? No. Why don't I do it? The older I got, the more I realized the reason why I didn't do it is because of values. One of the biggest or most valuable resource for an INTJ is time. And then it's opportunity cost, right? If I spend time playing this sport, then I won't have time making my brain bigger or something.
To do anything else.
Yeah. Only to realize that in college, wow, I was I don't know how to dress. You know, like,
Mm-hmm.
and then like in my early 20s, thinking to myself, wow, I don't know how to flirt. It's
Mm-hmm.
all the, it,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like a very delayed game. It's everything that I feel like most people or SF people focused on at earlier in their, like earlier on in their life, how
Mm-hmm.
courtship, how to make friends. I didn't focus on that. So as what, similar to what you said, it is a catch up game.
Mm-hmm. So here's a funny question for you. Do you remember having a moment where you like discovered like looking at the back of your head, like the back of your hair? Because I know that I've talked to a few INTJs who had the
Yeah.
same experience. It's like you can like make everything look somewhat decent on the front, and then all of a sudden like one day you like somehow like see a mirror from behind and you're like, oh no.
Yeah, I have a
Like I
cowlick.
wish I never saw
Yeah.
that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to always have a cowlick. Did you have that?
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. For I had like a moment like looking at the back of my head and then like just being like, I wish I never did that. And like, I was more conscious of it afterwards, but I have to say like today, like I just still don't look in the back because it's like too much to deal with. I'm like, I'm just gonna like hope for the best at this point.
Yeah.
Like hopefully it's acceptable.
Do you have a system that you created where it's like, okay, if I do this, then the back of my hair should theoretically look
Should
good.
be should be theoretically okay.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Mhm.
But I'm definitely also not taking the time to like double check it or like put any more time into it than is like that whole process of like getting yourself together as a female, like to like even at this point in my life, it's incredibly frustrating
Mhm.
and just like there's some mornings like I'm trying to get to work and like get out of the shower and then like my hair gets stuck on something and then I'm just like I lose my sock like underneath something because I like and the other thing and I'm just like I get to this point where I'm like I'm gonna burn everything down like just
Yeah.
because this process is just so infuriating,
Mhm.
and whereas like I know like I've had people in my life who have like loved that process. They're
Yeah.
like they love like getting ready and like doing their hair and like doing their makeup and like it's like they find joy out of it. Like they
Mhm.
find like it kind of like enriches their life. Whereas me, like it feels like I'm battling something like physically
Mhm.
to get out the door.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure that like that SU battle is reciprocated somewhere like in your own life too. But that's how it's been in my experience.
It's there for guys, not as crazy as it is for ladies. Recently, I was working with this ISTJ, and she came to work one day, and she didn't have makeup on, and
Mm-hmm.
everyone asked her
Oh
whether she
gosh,
was.
are you sick?
Yeah, exactly. Are you sick? What's wrong? Like, are you
Yeah.
tired? Yeah, and then for her, she was just standing there. ISTJ. She was like, I just don't have makeup on. Like, just
Yeah.
annoyed at everyone asking her that.
Even my own mother. One of the times, like recently, like when I saw my mom, like I wasn't wearing makeup, but she's like, "Are you ill?" And I'm like,
Oh my god.
"No."
Mhm.
And I was like, "You birthed me. Like you should know." Like, but for some reason, like it just, it's. I think people like that as an adult too. It's like
Mhm.
you disconnect from like, oh, this is just this person.
Yeah, another thing also is like dressing requirements for guys and
Mm-hmm.
girls. I say this all the time. I would be the worst girl if I was a lady because I don't know how to do makeup. I don't understand the concept of makeup. I don't know how to do my hair. I had long hair once and I chopped it off. Like my locks were
Mm-hmm.
all the way to my belly button. I chopped it off because maintenance is way too labor intensive and just
Yeah.
having to approach the world in a very specific way. And if you don't, then you get people think you're sick or there's just so much judgment. As a guy, I could wear the same clothes every single day, and then people are like, "Oh, okay, he's just a dude." But for
Yeah.
ladies, I feel like there's so much gossip, so much shit talking that doesn't really happen for guys.
I mean, I think it's definitely there's a line between like acceptable and like socially unacceptable.
Mhm.
And I found how to like walk right above that line where it's like all of my clothes generally look the same,
Mhm.
and like I have duplicates of like this black tank top I'm wearing, I have six of this shirt,
Yeah,
because
after
like
the
I
same
wear it so
jeans.
much. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like I have like I have one kind of vest that I like. I have it in like a camel, a gray, and a black. And so it's like I can change between those three, you know? And so I've found ways to like socially like appropriate, like, and I think like all of those outfits like look good, you know? And I would say that some SF individuals would agree with me. But
SF
it's like,
approved.
is it like elaborate? Is it like cool? Like, is it SF cool? Like, not really. But like, does it look nice? Yes. And so I'm like, as long as I can just like walk that line comfortably, I'm good. I don't have to try too hard to like have the coolest like look or like, you know, have the coolest like whatever it is. Like I just have to be in a place where like I'm comfortable and it's like there's no feathers ruffled over it because then that's just annoying to have to deal with.
Now that makes a lot of sense. Since we're talking about clothing, when you notice that you were catching the feels for someone, did that change the way you dressed? How did it affect you as a person when you noticed that you were catching the feels for someone, and if you knew that you were going to be within the proximity of that person, did you approach it any differently?
You know, I don't think that I ever did. Honestly, I don't think that I was like aware enough of like I don't even think I could have flexed that muscle like if I wanted to because I was just kind of like still like discovering the back of my head for the first time. And that's kind of always how I've like felt at some stage of life is like everyone's over here, you know, like everyone's figured this thing out and that thing out. And it's like I'm still like discovering that like I like to chew gum, you know. It's just like that SE delay is sometimes so far off. And so I don't think with like clothing that I ever really like try to do anything different. I do remember one time though I had a neighbor and she like I thought she was really cool. And she would wear like clothes that were like brighter colors. Like she would wear like light blues and like light pinks and stuff like that. And I remember being like, oh my gosh, like I like everything she wears looks so pretty on her, you know? And I was like, I wonder if like I wore colors like that, if it could be pretty on me too. And so like during that period, I like bought different kinds of like clothes that like I would think that she would wear, you know, because like I wanted to try to wear it and I would like try it on and I would never wear it. Like never wore it outside. I had like a bunch of stuff that was like bought it, wasted the money on it because I'm like, I'm going to try this out. Did not, never, it just like, it went to waste basically, which, you know, that period lasted like a short amount of time. And I think I learned a lot from, you know, just stick with like what you're comfortable with and what you feel good in. And if you feel good in it, like that's going to resonate, like that's going to speak more than like some loud or different kind of outfit that you don't feel comfortable in because then like you just look like awkward and uncomfortable. And so I'd much rather be comfortable than uncomfortable.
I've spoken like a true INTJ or a TE user. I understand exactly what you're talking about. There was a point in time where I decided to dress more SF-like, more like people who enjoy attention. And I remember taking pictures and looking at it and just thinking to myself, dude, you look ugly as hell. What are you doing? Like, that doesn't even match. Your shoes are off color. Like, none of that match at all. And I remember looking at that picture and just thinking to myself, okay, I'm never doing that again. But because I tried it, you know, like this is SENI at this point, right? Because I tried it, I have the data to tell me, okay, this doesn't work for me specifically. So let's kind of go back to what has worked for me. And then kind of echoing what you said earlier, I have the same clothing, same shirts, same pants. My INTP friend actually got me into this. He told me that if you like a piece of clothing, you should probably buy more than one because you don't know whether they're going to stop selling it. And ever since he said that, like, you're absolutely right. If this looks good on me, I'm going to buy more of it.
Oh, yeah, totally. Actually, that was like a business idea I had like a few years ago. I was like, I wanted to start like the one store. Or it's like you find like the one best shirt ever, right? And then like the prompts of the company is like, we will continue to produce this one shirt like for the next 100 years, like whatever it is, you know? And so that way, like if you ever like, you found like the one pair of socks that you like, you know, but like, I don't know about for you, but like I have a pair of socks that I like, or I have like a few packs of the socks that I like, and I had gotten several packs of them, right? But like over the span of years, it's like, you do have to replace your socks every so often. Cannot find them anymore, you know? And so I'm like, oh man, like that's where like the one company would come in. But there's like certain things I think that like everyone needs a good t-shirt, you know, like kind of universally. And I don't know, there's certain things that it's like, oh, if you find like a really good one, you're gonna want to like continue to get that one. But maybe that's just me as like an INTJ, and like I'm not thinking about like the SE users who are just like, oh my gosh, if I had to be stuck wearing the same t-shirt for the rest of my life, I think I would die, you know? So I'm probably missing that other balance perspective, which is valid. So
Have you ever been complimented on the way you dress by someone that you were interested in?
I don't think so. No, but I have gotten complimented on how I dress from other females, which I think is kind of in some ways like better, because it's like if it's a girl complimenting how you look, it's like they're not trying to necessarily, not always like get anything out of it. They're just like, oh, I really like actually like what you're wearing. And so you're like, at least for myself, I'm like, yeah, it's your job.
Validation.
Yeah. Didn't screw up this one. I think the interested in word is kind of like what would throw me off there. I do remember one time when I was in college, I went someplace to go get pizza, and it was like a pizza like bar, and I was with my roommate, and someone there was like, you look like you dress more uniquely than anyone I've ever met before in my life. And I was like, and like, but I wasn't like, there was no interest there. No, it was a man. Yeah.
Oh, was that a compliment though?
He was saying it in like a complimenting kind of way, like, ooh, I'm so like intrigued, you know? And I was just kind of weirded out though. So
okay, since we're on the topic of compliments,
ended there.
Right, like this is a great segue. What type of compliments do you typically receive as a lady?
I mean, I carry myself so differently now than I did, you know, several years ago. Like I'm definitely a lot more comfortable and secure, and there was even a period where it was like, you know, I wasn't in a dating phase of life, but then like a man would like give me a compliment, and then I would kind of like fluster, like I don't know how to deal with this, you know, because like I'm like not interested in anyone. And like, but I've even like evolved past that, where it's like anyone at this point can kind of say anything to me, and I can like receive it with grace. And that was just not the case, and I don't think, you know, for many years of my life. But I would always take compliments, and it's sorry, like I don't have a good sensory on like things that have been said specifically, but I think you could put like any of your regular generic compliments like in a bucket and just say any one of those. I didn't really know how to receive them, and I would almost panic that like because I received a compliment, like I had to like reciprocate in some way. And so I wouldn't know how to do that. And so if anything, it was more of like a deterrent. You know, how do you get the INTJ to go and hide? It was kind of that way. Because it was just really, I didn't know how to receive it in a way that, and a lot of the times those people didn't mean anything by it. Like they weren't like trying to like come after me or anything like that. I just didn't know what to do with like hearing like a nice thing, and just how to receive it and just like let it be. So I think that was just more of like a maturity thing on my part, and I probably was so awkward in some of the situations looking back.
This is a question that I've always had, and then I just thought about it. You're the first INTJ content creator on my channel, so thank you for being part of this as well. Of
course.
Ladies typically get complimented more than men do. One of the struggle for an INTJ guy is that most of the time, or I wouldn't say most of the time, a lot of the times we're not sure whether someone's complimenting us or they're hitting on us. Is that the same for ladies as well?
Yeah.
So it is.
100%. Yeah. 110, 50 million%. But the thing is like, I realize too now, is sometimes those people don't even know themselves. Like a lot of times there's not like, I think if you have an eye, you think like everyone has, or you assume everyone has intent with the things that they say, because NI is like shooting like 10 rows away, and then like is picking up the pieces to get to the thing that they want. Right. And so we just assume that on everyone else is our own bias. So sometimes someone might say something, and like, we're like kind of like trying to like determine intent, or like, were they trying to say this, or were they trying to say that? Like they weren't trying to say anything. They were just saying what the words that they said, and sometimes that's it, you know?
Yeah.
Sometimes there's more intent involved. That was such a big learning curve for me, is like sometimes people are just saying something to say something, and like, you know, maybe it'll turn into this or maybe it'll turn into that. They don't always know, or they're not always coming in with a plan, you know?
So would you say that you were more on the side that if someone gave you a compliment that they wanted something from you, as opposed to someone gave you a compliment and it kind of just went over your head?
I always thought that someone wanted something from me.
Oh, I wonder if that's one of the key difference between being a guy and a girl. Guys don't get approached a lot unless you're like Channing Tatum or whoever the hottest person out there is at this point. But yeah, if you're an INTJ guy or girl and if you agree with like what Lindsay's saying right now, please leave a comment because I'm very curious to know whether that's a guy or girl thing or whether it's a me thing.
And I think some of that had to, from my perspective, also had to deal with like fear of like then not knowing how to handle that request if that was the intent. But I would, again, it's the assumption and the bias towards if someone is coming to me, there's intent and direction behind it. And so if they're coming to me with this kind of like a nice, like complimentary way, it's like, well, what's the intent? Like, and so that was always, it just flustered me a lot. And I think, caused me to run and hide a lot.
Yeah, I actually just did an interview with an ENFJ, Denzel Mensa. If you guys like ENFJs, watch that video. He engaged with his FI by telling me that whenever he gives out a compliment to someone, it's a gift. And I spent like 20 minutes in that video telling him.
I love that.
But from my perspective, or for like other INTJs that have commented as well, it's not received as a gift. But for him, it's like, it's a gift. It's a gift. I'm like, yeah. Well, we don't receive it as a gift.
Yeah.
Yeah, it relates to what you just said. And when it comes down to courtship, do you tend to be in the more masculine side of the relationship, or are you also in the feminine side of the relationship, or like how does relationship work for an INTJ lady?
I think that's one of the things that's like you can't really universally slap an INTJ sticker on because depending on the person and like who they're with, like the roles I think will change based on circumstances, based on lifestyle, based on, income. And so I think that isn't going to be personality specific so much. Some people might associate being kind of structured directionally with like a more masculine trait, right? To me, like that's a more feminine trait. Like, but it's also what I do as a default, Yeah. And so I think that you'll find balance in those things. Like you'll find people who have like this kind of like more desire. Like for me, the routine of like how I allot my time throughout the week is like sacred. Like it pains me to break out of certain, patterns I have because like that's where I find comfort.
Yeah.
Whereas I know a lot of people find that rigidity to be uncomfortable. Right. And so I think that's where you're going to see balance and roles being different. And it just really depends on how do you as a person interpret masculine and feminine as it relates to these different kinds of roles, Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. Speaking for experience, I've been called a diva and I've been called a diva from certain types or certain people that I dated, and I've been told that I was narcissistic from other people or both at the same time. But it usually comes down to just how comfortable I am with that person and what cognitive function is like at the helm at that point, right? Like when I'm dating someone, I want to show FI. I want them to engage with SE. I've noticed that when I engage with FI, it is seen as it's seen negatively for a dude. And this isn't specific to any type, because I've dated. I'm like a Pokemon master. I've dated every type, or almost every type. And yeah, it's there's a certain type out there, certain people out there that if I start engaging with FI, start talking about my feelings, it's seen as me being a diva and me being controlling in an emotional sense. But when I start engaging more with TE, with people who typically don't have extroverted thinking or it's in the lower function, I'm seen as very too masculine, too controlling. I don't know if that's something that you faced as well.
Oh yeah, I think any INTJ is going to be accused, I guess that we're lightly, of being a little controlling from time to time. And again, I think it's just coming down to understanding like where that person derives their security from. And so, the INTJs are going to find that more in a controlling pattern not necessarily in the sensory, like in an SI way, like in a physical structure way, like this is where you put the spoon. You know, like I don't care where you put the spoon, but it's like I care that like if the dishes need to be put away, that they're done in a time that can like then allow this segment of the day to then open.
Yeah.
You know, again, like you said, like the time thing is very, like time is the most valuable resource, and the using time and like the categories of time that can be used, like I know that I can be controlling with that. And it's something that I've had to, at times in my life, just be like, okay, let's just breathe through it. It's not a big deal. No one else is thinking this is a big deal but you right now. Yeah. And so it helps to kind of get that objective perspective too. When people are like, why are you controlling this weird thing, you weirdo? Yeah.
Which hurts more for you? And no pressure, but you're speaking for all INTJ ladies out there. When you're told, when someone accuses you of being too emotional, or when someone accuses you of being too controlling?
Like, I know I'm controlling. So it's like the emotional, like if I'm accused of being too emotional, it's usually what that happens from. And like, I haven't gotten accused of that really very much in my life. But like in a time where it would happen is because I haven't processed emotions at a normal rate for a while, or like delayed in processing, or like I've delayed in just like coming to terms with certain emotions, and then they kind of pile up and then they kind of spill out and it's messy. And then it's like, yeah, shoot, like I made a mess of like the emotions, but like they're all real, like, and I feel them like very much so. Should I have been like a little bit like quicker in my processing speed? Yeah, probably. Would that have made this not a big mess? Probably. Do I know that I'm kind of bad with emotions? Yeah. And so it hurts when, you know, it's like you're called out for not being as like, basically like if someone is good with emotions, they're processing at a rate in which it doesn't tidal wave on top of them.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's like the kid that falls down and like scrapes their knee. They're going to cry about it for 30 seconds and they're going to get up and then they're going to be fine. Right. But like as an INTJ, it's like you're falling down, like scraping your knee a lot. And then like a mile down the road, then like that's when you start crying because you're like, oh gosh, like I've scraped my knee all these times, you know, but like there was no processing done along the way. And that's, you know, that's even worse for like our ENTJ, you know, brethren where they have FI last. It's like they're walking the farthest without, you know, processing the interior world. So that's kind of where like, and so when you get called out for something being messy, it's like, oh, yeah, like I know it's embarrassing for me too. Can I get better with it? Yeah.
It sounds like you've accepted that you can be bossy at times. Is that something that you had to learn to adjust while you were dating, or was their approach more like, I come as I am, you either accept me or you don't?
Well, there was a long time I didn't really think I was, I wouldn't say bossy. It's like,
that's actually
in certain ways, like I'm very like in a lot of ways I'm very specific in like the direction that like I'm going and kind of the things that flow into that direction. And a lot of times it doesn't involve other people. So a lot of times it's like the way I would always see myself is like I thought I was cool, chill, and laid back, you know? And if you ask me now, I would probably still say I'm like cool, chill, and like laid back.
Yeah.
And objectively, you know, I manage a bunch of people, and they say, like, as a manager, like, I'm very chill. Like, I don't micromanage people. I expect everyone to be their own boss, you know? And I'm more focused on things that, like, systems that can be put in place to make everyone's lives easier. But the thing is like, if you get into my system, that's where I can be more controlling, because now I'm trying to get all the parts to align to a specific direction. And like if you're trying to like, you know, flounder around in that, I'm just like get out. Like this is like I'm working on something. You know? And so I'm not very controlling as so much with the people. Like sometimes certain things, like I can get a little controlling with like plans and time. But otherwise I would say I'm pretty chill. Not always go with the flow chill, but I can be pretty chill. And it's more just kind of the things that I'm working on or have my head wrapped around. That's where I can be more controlling, but that doesn't really influence that many people.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm usually chill unless it involves me. It's when I'm around people and then they want to do something SE or they want to talk about something. Yeah, they could talk about it whenever, whatever they want. They could do whatever they want. But the moment they're like, John, come do this, I'm like, nah, dude, no. That's when I interject. That's when I tell you, okay, no, you're disturbing my peace. I just want to observe, or I just want to be a part of like this thing without actually being a part of it. So I definitely understand what you're saying.
With like the like wanting to do things bit, the most objectively trackable way that I've ever seen my SE function last in terms of like a group of people. So it's like you think of like type exists on a spectrum, right? Yep. And so you can only see someone who's SE last if you see someone who's SE first. And a few years ago, someone I knew had a birthday. It was at a go-karting place where they have the go-karts to go around the racetrack. Yeah. The group of people just had to be like, they were just a bunch of ESTPs, like a lot of ESTPs, a few other types like mixed in there, right? And so like I kind of am like, okay, this is going to be a little rough, but I'm going to go, right? And so I get there and like it's like the racetrack kind of go-karts, like not like the child ones, like these are kind of like a level up.
Yeah.
And there's a track that you go around. And so we were all in a group and we sit in the go-karts and it's like they hit the go button and you get to go for like, I don't know, it was like 5 minutes, right, of like going around this track with like little, when I say the last person in front of me had lapped me like 10 times by the time I was going around once, like that's not an exaggeration. I was so far behind the collective and like they showed like the stats like on the board afterwards. Yeah. I was like, I didn't know like how bad like I could be. Like I thought I would have been okay. Like I was like, okay, maybe like 1 or 2 laps will get on me. Not like 10 plus laps, you know? And so it was such a good like objective like zoom out of like, wow, okay, there's the spectrum. Like there's SE first and like there's SE last. And like by the end of it, like after we had done a few runs, like I got like maybe like 8 laps behind. You know, but it wasn't much better.
That's pretty wild. So like when you start engaging with SE with someone that you're dating, do they usually call you out on it? Because it sounds like you typically don't engage with SE as often.
I mean, I would say that like if I'm around anyone that has SE higher than I do, they're going to call out something random that I do not expect them to notice because I haven't noticed it like ever. Well, one time I was having coffee with someone from the type community, actually, who I'm in OP with, and has SE second. And we were talking about the functions and stuff like that. And he's like, are you aware right now that there's birds like chirping outside? And I was like, there's birds chirping out. I was like, okay, like if you put me into a box, right? Yeah. And like I couldn't hear in that moment. And you said, are there birds chirping outside? I would say most likely because we're outside, there would likely be birds chirping. But did I hear birds chirping? 0%.
Yeah.
Not one. There was no stimulus of hearing birds chirping that had entered my mind. Like that had been so filtered out.
Yeah.
And so if you think of like that filtering process has happened already so far in front of that SE function, because it's like the brain is like narrowing down what it needs to do to get through life with that NI function first.
Yeah.
It's like we're missing a lot of stuff that SE people just like normally see.
Yeah.
You know, normally notice. And so I always feel slow in someone, like slow, not even just like on the racetrack, but like just like slow physically in situations, especially mentally. With SE people. Yeah. I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I'm so, like I'm just very slow, you know? Now, have me like solve a problem, help me like, you want me to like find a solution for something, like I'm going to be the fastest person in the room, you know, I'm going to like relate it to something else that like I know about, and then I'm going to get down, like I'll solve the thing, like I'll solve something better than anyone else can.
Yeah.
But like doing the thing, totally different circumstance.
Yeah. I absolutely understand what you're saying. Like my computer monitor is right in front of a window that looks outside, and I have the shades open typically for my cat to just stare out the window, and it snowed 1 foot. Like it was 1 feet of snow, and I didn't realize it was snowing. and the window's right in front of me. Like there's
Yeah, that's exactly it.
yeah, and like I didn't realize it was snowing until I took a break from work because I was just zoned into what I was doing, and I absolutely understand your experience with like low extroverted sensing, which I don't think people understand how ridiculous it is to have.
I've been accused of spilling everything.
Oh,
Like
really?
that's another thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
like anyone I'm around, is like at some point they realize like if Lindsay touches something, like it becomes wet. Like
Yeah.
no one knows how.
I'm
You
actually the
know,
opposite
but
of
it's like
that.
I'm just
Yeah.
disrespecting. I'm just like disrespecting the sensory like the whole way. It's like I'll wash my hands and then like I'll go do something else, and then it's just like there's a trail of water that like happens to follow behind me. But it's just like mass disrespect on like a
Yeah.
very small scale.
Yeah, when it comes down to like the physical world or the sensory world, I'm actually like super hyper focused on that. Like I tell myself consciously, I'm like, all right, don't spill this. Or when I'm sitting next to someone, I
Oh
don't.
well, yeah.
Yeah, when I'm sitting next to someone I don't know, I'm like, all right, there's like an inch between us. If you don't want to touch them, you have to like squeeze in a lot more. Like
Yeah.
you're either you're super sensitive to this sensory world, or you just don't see it at all.
Well, so okay, I know what you're talking about, and I do that too. But if you think about it, you're only able to like focus on one sensory, and there's all of these sensories happening.
Yeah.
So, like for instance, like I was cooking Thanksgiving meal for my family like a few years ago, and I had lots of sensories in the oven and on the thing, whatever, and I'm just like trying to like hold it all together to like get this food to come out. And somewhere in the process, it's like I stick my finger in the blender and turn the blender on, and like like that was like the famous Thanksgiving that Lindsay put her finger in the blender and turned it on,
Oh my
and
god.
so, but the thing was, it's like
Is your finger
there's
still there?
so many.
You stab your finger?
Yeah, it is. I have a scar on it, but like it's still there.
Battle scars.
But it's like it's so hard. Like you'll try to focus in on one thing, and for me, like at that time, it was like getting like the potatoes out, but like I had missed the fact that like while I'm getting the potatoes out, like my hand was over here, and then I pressed a button. Like I couldn't to multi-focus on sensory is so difficult, and so like I'll try to take something out, like you're saying, like don't spill this thing, right? And all my attention's on like don't spill the thing, don't spill the thing, don't spill the thing, and you don't realize that like you knock something over like on the way to like not spill the thing. So that's where I see like the broadness of SE. Like someone who has SE high is able to see the spectrum and like work within the spectrum, whereas like if you have SE lower, it's like the spectrum is there, you can appreciate it, you can notice it from like a backed up way, but then when you're actually having to work in it, it's very difficult to navigate physically more than one thing.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And then just speaking from experience, I said this in like one of my older videos. I've experienced living in a moment like 3 different times, and legitimately, I could count on one hand how many times that happened. The world sucks. Like, there's so much noise going on. Like, I was at a park, and it was so fucking cold. I heard like sirens, I heard cars, I heard like dogs barking and shit. I'm just like, this is what it feels like to live in a moment. Like, there's so much going on. I don't like this. I didn't like where I was, but I mean, I was with someone, so I appreciated being with them. But when it comes down to actually like seeing and feeling everything, all the sensations that we have, it's overwhelming. So there's someone out there in the type community that said that your 4th function is what you aspire to be. And I do daydream about being a SE dominant person. I do daydream about being someone on top of a stage singing in front of everyone, like all the songs that I love and everyone applauding me. But am I ever going to do it? No. I took improv class. I hate it. I took improv class 3 different times, and then every single time the person that was in charge of it, who is an ESFP, kept telling me, dude, you just need to relax. Like, I don't know how to relax. Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, we over try to control the moment so that like the least amount of chaos will happen. And then often in doing so like we'll end up causing like more like chaos in some other way.
Yeah.
But it's like the prevention of like NI is trying to like not have to deal with more stuff, more stimulus. And so we're always trying to like shut down that as we like go through life. And I think that was one thing that I realized too, is like, because I tried to like shut down like sensory chaos, like sometimes I was trying, like this is a part of like the controlling, like you're talking in relationships, is like sometimes I would try to shut down sensory chaos on someone else's behalf. And like it took a while for me to realize that like they might not want that. You know, they might want to experience the chaos. They might want to like live in the moment and like, you know, play things by ear and move forward in that way. But like my own bias is like, oh gosh, like crazy chaos, like quick, like let's like smother that fire before it gets too big. And having to understand and realize that that way of feeling towards the world belongs to me.
Yeah.
And that's not the same for everyone else.
The moment I realized that was the moment I stopped telling people how much planning I put into certain events. Like I would be hanging out with people. Actually, there was a TikTok trend recently or like a viral video where someone said, hey, you know, when we say, let's just go with the flow is a person. Like someone legitimately has to decide what we do and then we go with it. I like that person always thought that things just like happenstance, things just happen. No, like
we are the flow.
Exactly, we are the flow. We're the people that make sure like things actually happen in a certain way. When I hang out with friends, you know, like I don't tell them, okay, I plan for this, I plan for this, I plan for this to happen. The beauty of having NI, we get to choose our future a lot of the time, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally.
So I would direct them a certain direction that I felt comfortable with doing, and the moment it kind of derails into something that's kind of unknown, I kind of freak out a little, but I don't show it. I allow them I then allow
you're
them
like,
to
don't keep it together
exactly. And then like being, I guess, an NT, we have that face where we don't really like, we're not expressive. It's, they can't tell. And that was one of the learnings I also had too growing up, where it's okay, there are certain people that don't want to hear about all the plans that you have in order to make it as efficient as possible. And there are people that thrive in it. So there are a lot of times where I would be around an SF person or just any like P type out there. I will let them take the lead. Typically, I would take the lead and then figure out what we're going to do. But the moment I am in a situation that wasn't planned for, it's like, okay, hey, you're up.
Yeah, this is your core, buddy. Like, this is your chosen destiny.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it, you know, too, though, even in those situations, it's just like the hard part is like anticipating things that could happen or would not happen, you know, based on like the intent. And then it's like, you kind of have to squash down thinking like that if you're trying to be in the moment or you're trying to let someone with like SE like kind of like take the reins, you know, because I've often like found myself kind of like being a fun killer in certain situations because it's like I can't not see 10 steps down the road. And so if I'm bringing that stuff up, while it might be valid, it's like, that's not fun right now, Lindsay. You know, like that's not like we're enjoying this thing. We're not thinking about this down here, you know? And so again, like all these like steps and like maturing to yourself where you're comfortable with like all these functions and like you can be happy and content like using them or not using them, and there's no you know, like the concept of like being triggered by something, like I connect that very much to that's like something pressing on a function that you are not comfortable with yet. You know, you haven't established a relationship with, because you're being triggered, right? There is like almost like a physiological response in something but it's coming through your own cognitive state, because if it was the same for everyone would be having that same reaction. But most of the time a trigger is related to you and in a particular situation. So like if we were sitting in a room together, 50 people, and a tiger jumped through the window, everyone would probably scream and run out the door. The tiger is not a trigger. The tiger is a real physical threat, right? But if we're all 50 of us are in a room together and someone's talking about something and all of a sudden you're getting offended, it's like that might be triggering you specifically, but it's not triggering everyone else. Therefore, it's related to how you're cognitively interpreting some information and then how that's sitting with you. So I think what's really interesting is, you know, looking back now to where I am in life, my level of comfort has evolved so much from when I graduated high school to like where I am today. And I would have never thought in my body I would be the level of comfortable I am with certain circumstances and certain things in life that I am now. And like that's very refreshing to feel and know. But I'm wondering from like the INTJ male perspective, Like, if you had to look back and give yourself, advice when you weren't as developed from a cognitive perspective, what you would tell yourself, like graduating high school, first years of college, like what would be your advice to you?
That's a great question. Actually, that's something that I've been like searching for, or that aligns with something that I've been searching for the past like year and a half when I started my YouTube channel. YouTube has been very therapeutic for me. It's something that has made me analyze myself a lot more than analyzing other people. I think, and this is very INTJ, very INTJ. If I were to give my advice for my younger self, my advice would be follow your instincts. You know what is best for yourself. You're going to run into a lot of mistakes. You're going to fuck up a lot, but that's part of being that's part of life. You're going to mess up. Every time you mess up in something gets you one step closer to where you actually want to be. So I know that when I was younger, I've always tried to find the most optimal path towards relationship, towards career, towards friendship, towards everything, only to realize at a certain age that life isn't a destination. Life is a journey. So the moment that you start understanding that there's no final destination to where you want to go to, there might be this title that you want to get to, but the moment you get there, it's not going to be what you want anymore. Like, you're not like younger John, you're an INTJ, you're an IDOM, you're always going to want more. And because you always want more, you're going to be a different person every few years. You're going to look back at yourself as a teenager and not even recognize who that person was. I look back at myself when I was in my early or mid 20s and I don't even know who that person is anymore because I have continuously focused on developing myself. So for younger INTJs, if you think you're messing up, that might be a good thing. You're going to live, you're going to learn, and you're going to continuously get better.
Yeah.
What about you?
Good. I think for myself, it would be not being as concerned, like almost to like take a sense of pride in the fact that maybe I wasn't as SF as everyone else, maybe like I was the music nerd throughout all of school, but like don't be ashamed of that. Like be like own the fact that like you're the smartest in the room in a particular area. And again, like I think that is kind of a difference between like the gender dynamics in type is like it's almost socially unacceptable in some ways to be like smarter in a particular area, like if you're the female, like it feels like threatening to some people. But then I realized like there was people like in my life who like they loved me because of the fact that like like I did have this big brain, and like they celebrated that about me. And I was like, oh, it's not like a bad thing to be, kind of like the nerd, like I don't have to be anything else other than who I am. And so I think there was a lot of comfort in that I got later in life, but I really wish I would have been more okay with that when I was younger because like I couldn't help it. Like, I was the music nerd. Like I was in the music practice room all the time. Like I did hide from everyone, but like I so much didn't want that to be my reality because it almost felt like shameful in some way that I couldn't kind of compete in the SF spectrum, but I didn't have to.
That was beautiful. You were talking to my younger FI feels right there. Yeah. Always wanting to fit in. The video's getting kind of long. Thank you, Lindsay, again for being part of this channel or being part of this video. Yeah, no, you're amazing. Like you're exactly what I expected you to be, which is who you are in your videos. Thank you again for being on my channel. I really do appreciate it. Thank you everyone for watching. I'll have a link to her channel below. Check out all her videos. She's one of the reasons why I learned a lot about myself being an INTJ. So I highly recommend checking out her channel. All right. Thanks again, Lindsay. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Don. Bye.
Bye everyone.